Well, well, well. It is I, the lyrical miracle, the sexual, intellectual, the cunning linguist, and the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner. And you are watching The Roman Show and listening to me. Keep listening and have yourself an eargasm.
This is The Roman Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here from The Roman Show, I have Joel Gertner. You know, Joe, one thing that I always remember are those great catchphrases that you used to do prior to coming out with the Dudley Boys. How did you come up with this thing? I mean, are you on the side also? Are you a writer or a poet or something as well?
You know, creative writing, I guess, is always fun. Something maybe I've dabbled in a bit, but really in wrestling, I think, is where I've kind of done the most of it. Writing for my own character, which is, you know, great to have the opportunity to do. Generally in wrestling, once you get beyond a certain level, you know, when you're first coming up and independent, nobody's writing stuff for you generally. I mean, some promoters perhaps might, you know, want to have that kind of control over the content, but there you kind of have to do for yourself, you know, and that's where you kind of learn it. But then once you get to a certain level, generally outside of ECW, there are, you know, cases where things are a little bit more scripted, a little bit more formatted, structured. In ECW, there was always a plan, there was always a method to the madness, but there was, you know, everybody knew point A, point B, and then you had the creative leeway to put your input in and basically have a say into the evolution and the progression of your own character and your own gimmick. And yeah, it was absolutely refreshing, and it was something I never took for granted and was always thankful to have, was the ability to kind of, you know, lead my character a bit on my own and give him his own sense of direction and say the things that he might want to say. So I definitely owe a lot of that to Paul Heyman, yeah.
I'll never forget the one where you said, I think it was the first pay-per-view, the one, the Fred Flintstones, the bed rock, something like that. You mentioned Daisy Duck and so forth. Let's go back to that first pay-per-view when ECW for the first time got a pay-per-view. How was it backstage? I think there was word that there was a pep talk from Paul Heyman to get everybody hyped up. Take us back to those days.
A lot of fun. I mean, yeah, you know, there was a pep talk. There were a lot of pep talks. You know, there were so few resources. You know, everything we had, we put back into the product, and it was on a shoestring budget, and everybody, it was blood, sweat, and tears. So as you could imagine, you know, on the one hand, what's great about it is that it was a family. It was very tight-knit, and it was, you know, morale was great, always. But morale was great always because we always did have a pep talk occasionally. And, you know, you could see in Beyond the Mat that the pep talk, you can see the environment for the first pay-per-view. And, you know, everybody was, you know, more than friends, which, you know, sometimes in your workplace environment, you know, if you can even everybody get along and be friends, you know, that's a blessing. But when everybody instead you're not just a team, you're not just friends, but it's more like family, you know, that's the height, you know, that's the epitome, the apex of being able to, you know, love the people that you're working with.
WWE Network now has launched the Monday Night Wars. I think they just recently had an episode featuring ECW and so forth. How do you feel about that? Why do you feel that the network made ECW look? You know, what's your take on it?
I thought it was great. I watched it this past week when it aired and had a lot of fun doing so as an active participant and as a fan, you know, of wrestling in general and of 90s wrestling and of ECW. It was a lot of fun. For me, watching that episode of the Monday Night Wars brought back a lot of memories. You know, just like it does really every time I watch ECW and everything else that I happen to catch on the WWE Network. So a lot of fun, a blast, just kind of reliving the moments and the memories and the feelings of it all.
That era was just wrestling was at its pinnacle, you know. It was just a big thing. Do you think we could ever get there? And if we do get there, what do you think it's going to take?
Wrestling is it's very fluid. You know, it's not static. It's always changing. It's always moving forward. even if it doesn't seem to be. It is a cyclical industry. It's a cyclical business. So there are ebbs, there are flows, there are golden eras, golden periods, you know. When TV first became big, the Hollywood TV era with Gorgeous George was the first golden era. When the WWF went national in '84 with Hulk Hogan, another golden era. And of course, you know, in the '90s with the Monday Night Wars and Rock, Austin, Goldberg, the NWO, you know, also. And now also in many ways, because now WWE has NXT, their own developmental but strong number 2 brand, their own content, so that, you know, if you like Raw, maybe you'll love NXT. If you like NXT, maybe you'll love Raw because people are more seasoned, one or the other. And hopefully people love both. I do. In addition to that, they're changing things now, and technologically we're at a time where wrestling is testing the waters of moving away from its reliance on television and kind of broadcast and over-the-air and cable, and going to this over-the-top kind of, you know, set-top box internet streaming Netflix model with the $9.99 with the WWE Network. If it can be monetized in such a way that even though pay-per-views, you're now getting, you know, just a part of $9.95 as opposed to $49.95 or $54.95, even with the cannibalization there. But if you're making up by having a subscription model for people who aren't going to house shows as much, that kind of thing, because wrestling is so global that instead of wrestling hitting your town 5 times a year, maybe it only hits twice, you know? So the business model is changing, but WWF, WWE has always evolved, and it's always stayed with the times. It hand in glove helped pay-per-view television come to be. It was kind of the proof of concept and the breeding ground, the model for pay-per-view. Just as with cable, you know, it was wrestling on TBS that got ratings, you know, akin to what the Braves were doing. So, you know, wrestling's always been at the forefront when it comes to finding ways to take TV or whatever will go beyond TV and replace it. Wrestling wants to get its feet wet there yesterday. And I think WWE is doing a great job of that by working on the model that they've started last year and certainly has been in the work for the last handful of years. So I love it, yeah.
This is The Roman Show.